butcher of Gujarat airdropped into Bengal.
Prime Minister Modi is coming to London.
Narendra Modi was boycotted by Britain for a decade. Now he's India's Prime Minister, and this week we'll get a massive reception at Wembley Stadium and an overnight stay with David Cameron at Chequers. That's angered human rights activists, who projected this image onto Parliament last night. They accuse him of being a Hindu fundamentalist who allowed deadly communal riots to unfold in 2002 whilst in charge of Gujarat, something he denies. Hindu mobs raged through the state, burning their neighbours alive and raping women, whilst the police and authorities were accused of standing back and at times encouraging it.
Allowed to rest. Horrible water. Yeah.
Still unwilling to talk about his role during the post-Godhra riots, Gujarat Chief Minister Narendra Modi abruptly ends an interview with CNN-IBN's Karan Thapar on Devil's Advocate when asked if he regretted.
India is the only country in the world whose Prime Minister carries the inglorious title of being a butcher of Gujarat. This man is responsible for butchering thousands of Muslims in the Indian state of Gujarat and getting away with that, to the fact that he was rewarded and became the Prime Minister of India. And today, the entire India sits on the cusp of a biblical genocide. The butcher of Gujarat needs another genocide to be re-elected next year. And now 250 million Muslims of India and 20 million Sikhs in India face certain existential crisis. Their honor is at stake, their lives and property is at stake. And the fact is that world will forget the Rwandan genocide because of the very scale of the kind of butchery that is about to take place in India. And it is absolutely incredible that world is totally ignorant about this or pretending to be ignorant about this. But one has to give credit to the Indian diplomacy here and their information warfare teams and media in Bollywood, that they so conveniently are able to brush aside this image of India as being an apartheid state, a genocidal state, a state whose ruling elite is actually called the butchers because of their previous roles and hands in war crimes and genocides, and passing the buck entirely against Pakistan. I was hearing Narendra Modi's one of the speeches, and he said that it is India which exports software to the world while Pakistan exports terror. And once again, such an audacious and shameless claim to make, considering the fact that India has been sponsoring the biggest terrorist organizations in South Asia in different countries. And lots of people have weak memories, or they do not tend to have a sense of history. So they forget the role which these sinister states play within their region, within the world, while continue to deflect their war crimes against their adversaries, and in this case, Pakistan. So let's take you back on a little journey of history. 3 biggest terrorist organizations in South Asia were all sponsored and created by India, by Indian intelligence RAW. In 1971, we had Mukti Bahani in East Pakistan, a terror organization.
The Indian government takes the decision to help the Mukti Bahini, East Pakistan's rebel force. It is led by Commander-in-Chief General M.A.G. Osmani. Chief of the Army Staff Sam Manekshaw places Major General J.F.R. Jacob, Chief of Staff of the Indian Army's Eastern Command, in direct charge of the operation of training the Mukti Bahini. The first task is to start organizing camps in the border areas. 8,000 trainees are to be expanded to 20,000. They plan for a training period of 3 months for the rank and file and an additional 2 months for junior leaders. Meanwhile, India reached out to Israel in what was the first diplomatic cooperation exercise between the two countries. Israel secretly provided India with military supplies and arms and funneled aid to the Mukti Bahini. The Mukti Bahini had been fighting bitterly on the ground in East Pakistan and by this time had managed to completely demoralize the West Pakistani soldiers. They ambushed the Pakistanis relentlessly, eroding their will to fight and creating a hostile environment, confining soldiers to their fortified camps.
A terror organization of the Bengalis, which was created by the Indian Army, Indian intelligence, and acknowledged by Prime Minister Modi himself that for every Mukti Bahini Bengali terrorist, an Indian soldier was standing side by side with him. And through them, there were about 200,000 or 250,000 Mukti Bahini terrorists and militants. Half of them were Indian Army officers and troops. They slaughtered nearly 1 million Bengalis and non-Bengali Muslims, Pakistanis in East Pakistan. I mean, the atrocities committed by Mukti Bahini are so audacious, are so unbelievable, so heart-wrenching that actually gives you chill down your spine. And that organization was entirely created by Indian intelligence to dismember East Pakistan, which has now become the Bangladesh. But the fact remains that that terrorist organization existed for over a decade. It was created much before 1971, trained and equipped in India, launched by India, deployed by the Indian Army. And it was totally directed against the civilian population, which was loyal to West Pakistan or Pakistan at that time. And of course, they slaughtered every man, woman and children who was supposed to be loyal to Pakistan at that time. And the butchery is unbelievable. Nearly 1 million Pakistanis were butchered by Mukti Bahini, by Indian Army, by Indian establishment in 1971 in what was former East Pakistan and today's Bangladesh. Moving fast forward, we come to Sri Lanka, where again a ruthless, vicious, bloodthirsty, cutthroat bloodhounds of Tamil tigers were created by the Indian intelligence and Indian government and establishment and the armed forces. For 30 years, Sri Lanka fought a desperate war of existential crisis against Tamil tigers.
This is CNN IBN.
On 21st May 1991, Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated by a suicide bomber from the LTTE's Black Tiger Suicide Unit. And Prabhakaran is still wanted in India for Rajiv Gandhi's assassination. But the fact is that the Tamil Tigers, including Prabhakaran, were trained by the Indian Army. This rare photograph shows LTTE guerrillas training at Kalatur, Salem in Tamil Nadu in 1984-85. Senior LTTE leaders told CNN-IBN that they were recruited by India's intelligence wing, RAW, and trained by the Indian Army.
Training in 84.
Nearly 1 million people died because the Indian Army wanted to take over Sri Lanka. They wanted to capture large parts of Sri Lankan territory also. So they launched this terrorist organization in exactly the same manner they had launched Mukti Bahini in East Pakistan earlier. And so that Indian Army followed the Mukti Bahini and they captured East Pakistan. Similarly, Indians wanted to capture a large part of Sri Lanka. And they launched Tamil Tigers. And for 30 years, Sri Lankans and army and the nation and the people fought them back, pushed them back. But at one point, Indians actually made a landing in Sri Lanka. They tried to repeat the process of 71 when they sent in the forces and they tried to captured East Pakistan. So they tried to capture Sri Lanka as well. But the dispute within the Tamil Tigers and the Indian Army and the resistance by the Sri Lankans pushed the Indian Army back. But it was this dispute that actually led to the assassination of the British Prime Minister, of the Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. It was a Tamil Tiger woman suicide bomber who executed him, blew herself up in front of him on his face, because of these disagreements that happened between the Tamil Tigers later and the Indian army and the Indian establishment. But the fact remains that Sri Lankans could not defeat the Tamil Tigers for 30 years because the Indians were providing them with the base areas, the sanctuaries, the training, the equipment, and the slaughter of Sri Lankans kept going on till the time Pakistan got involved with Sri Lanka. And finally, with our support, technical expertise, military equipment, manpower, soldiers, Sri Lanka was able to defeat the Tamil Tigers, and Prabhakaran, their leader, was ultimately killed in Jaffna, the northern peninsula. So that was the second terrorist organization. Again, in East Pakistan, nearly 1 million people were killed by Mukti Bahani. Again, in Sri Lanka, nearly 1 million civilians were killed by Tamil Tigers, again, backed and funded and supported and created by the Indian intelligence. And then, in the contemporary time, the last 20 years, we see the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, TTP, which is based in Afghanistan and waging a war against the Pakistani state, and the Balochistan Liberation Army, again based in Afghanistan, and waging their war against Pakistan.
Pakistanis are not our well-wishers. We will tackle Taliban in a way we want. Taliban will listen to the Deobandis much more. And today the goodwill for India and Afghanistan, India is the most popular country in Afghanistan in the world today. Amongst all the countries in the world, Indians are the most respected and most liked people there in Afghanistan. We will tackle them the way we have to. We don't need Pakistan. Let Pakistan bleed with the Taliban problem in case they do not give terrorism as an instrument of state policy. Second thing I think I don't have much time, I was told, is about how do you distinguish the terrorist organizations? How do you smother them? Deny them 3 things. That's what I said, the oxygen of this thing. Deny them the weapons, the funds, and the manpower. Now, funding are denied to the terrorists by countering it with the funds, more than 1.5 times of the funds available to them. So if they have got a budget of 1,200 crores, we can match it with 1,800 crores. They are all on our side. At least they won't do. They are mercenaries.
100,000 Pakistanis have died already in one of the most vicious terrorist and bombing campaigns, and one of the most dreadful part was, one of the most painful part of that was the butchery of about 150 school children who were slaughtered in Peshawar, the army public school. And that butchery was also carried out by TTP, which was again backed by the Indian intelligence, their proxy war against the Pakistani state on the same pattern which they deployed in East Pakistan supporting Mukti Bahani, and which they deployed against Sri Lanka supporting Tamil Tigers. Now they are supporting these 2 major insurgencies of TTP and BLA against Pakistan to soften up the Pakistani state so that the Indians can launch an invasion, just like the Russians have waged an invasion of Ukraine.
I am Commander Kulbhushan Sudhir Jadhav, number 4155 Zulu of the Indian Navy. I am a commissioned officer in the Indian Navy, and my alias name was Hussain Mubarak Patel, and I had visited Karachi on 2 occasions in 2005 and 2006 for basic intelligence gathering on naval installations and subsequent detailed basically gathering and information on the landing sites around Karachi and various naval vessels or whatever I could gather about the Navy. The raw officials that started sniffing that the Modi government will be in power by 2014. So I was inducted and my services were handed over to Research and Analysis Wing. And the aim was to see that all the activities along the Makran coast and Karachi and Balochistan interior, Turbat and Quetta were to be organized and nicely coordinated. Subsequently, me along with Anil Kumar had a meeting with Alok Joshi, wherein the plans and the finalization of activities along the Makran coast and Karachi were finalized. I was stationed in Chabar, the Iranian port city, under a fictitious name Hussain Mubarak Patel, and I was running a business there, Kanmida Trading Company. It was a discreet, non-embassy based operation, exclusively meant to conduct meetings with Baloch insurgents and terrorists. The aim of these meetings was always to see that the aims and the targets of RAW to conduct the various terrorist activities within Balochistan are conveyed properly to the insurgents, and any kinds of requirements of them are conveyed back to the RAW officials. My purpose of this time visit to Pakistan was to establish and meet the basic leadership of Baloch subnationals, the BLA or the BRA,
and capture large swaths of territory of Pakistan. So, for Narendra Modi to claim and to project in the world that Pakistan is a terrorist sponsoring country or terrorism exporting country is not just audacious, it's actually outrageous and preposterous. Pakistan, if it has ever supported any militancy, it has supported that in Indian occupied Kashmir, which is a disputed region, whose right of self-determination and freedom struggle is legitimately recognized by the United Nations. The case is in the United Nations. And the people have a right of self-determination. And the border between Pakistani Kashmir and the Indian-controlled Kashmir is not even a border. It's called the line of control because it's a ceasefire line only. Because the matter is so fluid still. So if Pakistani Kashmiris keep coming and crossing on both sides, that is by any definition of the international law or bilateral law cannot be called a support to terrorism or insurgencies on the Indian territory, because occupied Kashmir is not Indian territory. It is a disputed land where Muslims, half of the Kashmiris live on Pakistani side and the rest of them live on the Indian controlled side, and the area is disputed, and we have fought multiple wars over it. And we are going to fight the final war over that region as well. So that is the only terrorism which India can claim that Pakistan has been supporting inside Kashmir. But as far as the Indian track record is concerned, their support to Mukti Bahani across the international borders to dismember Pakistan is established. Their support to Tamil Tigers to dismember Sri Lanka is established. And their support to TTP and BLA to dismember Pakistan and soften up Pakistan for an Indian invasion into Pakistan is established. And within India, a biblical genocide of 250 million Muslims at the hands of Hindutva radical fascists and 20 million Sikhs is now absolutely on the verge of it now. And we are on the cusp of it, literally. And any day this genocide will begin. Already the economic boycott and humiliation and changing of the laws to insult and degrade in their family laws and to isolate them and bulldozing their homes. Everything is going on right now. Weapons are being distributed. Nearly 1 billion strong Hindus are being armed to encircle 250 million unarmed Muslims who are not even allowed to carry a hunting weapon or a knife at home actually. While the Hindus are being supported with all the might of the state and being given weapons as well to carry on the butchery. The butcher of Gujarat is on a mad frenzy now. He is going to launch an unprecedented, unbelievable butchery of Muslims and Sikhs in India very, very soon.
You need to meet India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He and his far-right Hindu nationalist party, the BJP, are bent on creating a lost Hindu kingdom. They call it the Hindu Rashtra. They've been in office since 2014, openly championing Hindu nationalist supremacist ideology. Scholars are now literally warning about genocide there. Minorities, from Christians to Muslims and beyond, are facing the greatest threats to their existence since India became independent in 1947. In fact, speaking of independence, remember Mahatma Gandhi? In 1948, he was assassinated by a Hindu extremist, a man named Nathuram Godse. Godse was a former member of the far-right Hindu nationalist paramilitary volunteer group known as the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, or RSS. Imagine if the world's white supremacists had one organized paramilitary group where they could all train together and get politically organized. Yeah, exactly. Founded in 1925, they were really into the politics of Mussolini and Hitler, the RSS. A senior founding member wrote about how he was inspired by Nazi Germany, which displayed, quote, race pride at its highest and was a good lesson for use in India. The extremist ideology binding the RSS is a kind of Hindu supremacy and nationalism known as Hindutva, which, to be clear, should not be confused with the religion of Hinduism. Hinduism good, Hindutva not so good. In fact, Hindutva...
And if that is not terrorism, if that is not genocide, if that is not war crimes, then perhaps we need to let go of all the international law in the world and let the sword decide. So, the whole purpose of this, my little brief vlog was to trigger your imagination, to revive you, to remind you of certain pieces of history that Narendra Modi forget to tell you. When he was audaciously blaming Pakistan for supporting or exporting terror, the role of Indian establishment over the decades has been so preposterous. There's such a genocidal regimes they have been. And as I said, if the Prime Minister carries the inglorious title of being a butcher of Gujarat, imagine the policy of the state would be. And now more butchery is coming because he needs a re-election in 2024. So for all those people in the world who have any concern about any human rights anywhere, keep an eye on India. You will forget Rwanda, what is about to happen in India by the butcher of Gujarat.